Hello everyone, welcome to today's show. I am Li Muyuang. The Chinese Communist Party's 2 sessions are still going on, but one piece of news makes people feel cold and scared. The GDP target is lowered to 4.5% to 5%. This is the lowest level in 35 years. But at the same time, the officials are still bragging to the outside world. In the next 10 years, China's middle income group will be more than 800 million people, becoming the world's biggest consumer market. 800 million middle class? Another world miracle. But do you dare to believe it? At job fairs, 100,000 people are fighting for a few thousand jobs. Flexible employment has exploded to a rumored 280 million. Middle-class families are stopping their house loans, assets are shrinking, and a wave of returning to poverty is crashing down like an avalanche. This big pie, is it the last straw for desperate people, or is it just treating ordinary folks like fools? Today, we will tear open this layer that looks fancy, but is really a cover-up. You will find the so-called stability is actually a fake picture held up by the sweat and blood of 200 million flexible workers. The so-called optimism is actually a numbers game that forces people with a monthly salary of 3,000 yuan to be upgraded to middle class. The so-called future is actually a castle in the air built on collapsing jobs, middle class returning to poverty, stopped house loans, dropping spending, and crumbling beliefs. The 2 sessions just started, and the GDP growth target was lowered from last year's 5% to 4.5% to 5%. The official words sound nice, to leave room for changing structure, preventing risks, pushing reforms, and also to match the long-term goal of doubling per-person GDP by 2035. It sounds grand, but the problem is, what is the real situation behind this? Actually, the pressure of the economy going down is no longer a secret, but a more and more clear reality. At this key time, the spokesperson for the National People's Congress, Lu Qingjian, suddenly let out a big satellite. In the next 10 or more years, China's middle-income group will be more than 800 million people, becoming the world's biggest consumer market, and also the best place for new tech revolutions. As soon as these words came out, they rushed to the hot search. It sounds really tempting. 800 million middle class. That's a world-level miracle. But if you think calmly for a bit, you will find something wrong here. The GDP target is being lowered. The economic pressure is easy to see increasing, but the future picture they draw is getting bigger and bigger. This is not an optimistic announcement about the economy, but more like drawing a super big pie for ordinary people in the reality of the economy going down, to make everyone keep believing the future is still bright. But the problem comes, if the GDP is being lowered, how does this pie get drawn bigger and bigger? Let's start from jobs to see what signal the big increase in so-called flexible employment is really showing. Official data is always very stable. The town unemployment rate stays around 5%, looking almost as steady as a mountain. But the problem is this real? Recently, a cover report from Caixin.net, the future of over 200 million flexible workers, actually explains a lot of inside stories clearly. China's flexible employment numbers have jumped from about 60 million to over 200 million, almost taking half of town jobs. What is flexible employment? The official definition is very loose. As long as you work more than 1 hour a week, it counts as employed, not unemployed. When you hear this standard, you understand where the problem is. This is not really employment. It's more like repackaging unemployment, changing the name to flexible. And these so-called flexible workers mostly face the same situation. Income is very unstable. No social security, no protection. Many people find it harder and harder to even support their family, pay house loans, or send kids to school. Actually, the officials themselves have not completely hidden the situation. The Vice Minister of Human Resources and Social Security, Wu Shuzhang, in a report at the end of 2025, admitted that flexible employment numbers are over 200 million, about 27% of the country's working people and 43% of town jobs. But some stats spreading online are even more shocking. For example, a data chart from Zhelonghui shows flexible employment numbers may have risen from 120 million in 2015 to 280 million in 2025. This number is not confirmed by officials yet, but if we guess based on a working population of about 700 to 800 million, what does that mean? If over 200 million are flexible workers, plus 50 to 80 million hidden unemployed people, that could lead to a very shocking situation. Almost every 2 to 3 workers, one is in an unstable job state. So why the sudden big increase? Caixin's report gives a direct answer. Economy going down. Big companies start cutting jobs, outsourcing positions. Many traditional jobs are disappearing fast. Young people who were once called chosen ones, now more and more can only fight alone, deliver food, drive ride shares, take odd jobs. So, flexible employment from a side way slowly becomes a main way to survive. When you look back at those official words of stable jobs, you will find a problem. Many times, unemployment didn't really disappear, but was redefined. Using a lower bar, counting a lot of unstable work as employment, the numbers naturally look much better. But if you uncover the flexible employment cover-up, what you see is a spreading job crisis. In the big background of low economy, the hardness of jobs has become many people's daily life. Li Qiang in the government work report also had to admit, youth unemployment is high, job pressure is still big. This year's goal is to add 12 million new jobs. Sounds active, but if we look from economic rules, the problem comes out. Based on a common economics experience value, for every 1% GDP growth, it can bring about 2 million new jobs. On the other hand, if economic speed drops 1%, it may lose 4 million job chances. Now, the GDP target is lowered to 4.5%, 5%. Roughly calculating, 1 year can add about 9 to 10 million jobs. Between this and the 12 million goal, there is already a not small gap. So this is not just a simple numbers problem, but a real pressure many people are facing. If you look at job fairs in different places, this pressure is even more clear. For example, not long ago in Anhui Hefei Luogang Park, a Lantern Festival special job fair, 202 companies offered a few thousand spots, but the job seekers who came were close to 100,000 people. The whole line of people waiting, many describe it like a journey to the West, lining up from the entrance far away. What's more sad is, the site has many masters and doctors from 985 to 11 schools. Many job seekers say, once over 35 years old, even interview chances are hard to get. Some people lined up a whole day, and when the fair ended, it still wasn't their turn. One company called Chiteng Robot in 1 hour got 300 resumes, but actual hiring spots are only a few. This kind of situation is clearly not just one fair's case, but a small picture seen in many cities. As for youth unemployment, outside estimates have long left official numbers behind, cruel enough to make people not dare look straight. In official words, 16-24-year-old youth, not including students, unemployment rate dropped back to 16.3% to 16.5% at the start of 2026. Sounds like overall under control. But do you really believe this number? Beijing University economist Zhang Dandan in early research, based on real survey data calculated back, in some stages, youth real unemployment rate highest rushed to 46.5%, more than double the official number at the same time. This is not alone. Folk sample surveys on social platforms are even more heartbreaking. Anonymous polls on Xiaohongshu, Weibo, Jihu, and such show over 50% of young people report being in unemployment or very unstable job state. Many just lie flat, live off parents, do flexible jobs, or graduate and unemployed. These data may not be 100% exact, but they all point to a clear fact. Young people finding jobs has become hard to the point of suffocating. When the economy's engines start to slow down together, a thing that was rarely talked about openly in the past, also slowly comes up: middle class returning to poverty. In the past 10 or more years, many Chinese middle-class families actually fell into a wealth illusion. Many people mistook the era's bonuses for their own skills, took the paper assets from rising house prices as real wealth that can be turned to cash anytime. But the problem is, once economic growth starts to slow, this wealth structure built on high leverage and high house prices easily gets cracks. Many people suddenly find that the seemingly strong wealth castle is actually built on sand. First hit is real estate, this heaviest big mountain. In Chinese family asset setup, about 70% to 80% are in houses. When house prices start long-term adjustment, second-hand market listings keep increasing. Deals get harder, liquidity slowly locked. Many middle-class families suddenly realize one thing: those houses seen as 10 million assets are actually just paper values, but the house loans that must be paid each month are real cash pressure. So, a very dangerous scissors gap appears. Assets shrinking, debts not decreasing. In this situation, some families start to bear bigger and bigger money pressure. On the market, more house loan late payments and stopped payments cases appear. For some middle class, the original asset level may slowly slide to negative assets. Besides houses, there are two other long-term big mountains pressing on families: education and healthcare. Even with policy pushing double reduction, many families' education worries have not really gone away. Kids' school districts, advancing, training, still a hard-to-ignore long-term cost. Plus healthcare costs uncertainty, many families are always in high tense money state. More key is, some core industries that supported middle-class income in the past are going through deep changes. In the past 20 years, internet, real estate, finance, education training were often called China's 4 big wealth makers. These fields not only took in lots of high education people, but also created many high pay and wealth stories. But in recent years, these fields are all going through shrinking and changes. When high-pay jobs slowly decrease, the whole society's upward moving paths get narrower. For many middle-class families, the first to break is not cash, but income expectations. In this background, some sad social things appear, like so-called hidden poverty, or even pretend to work. In some big cities' coffee shops, libraries, even park benches, you often see some well-dressed middle-aged people with laptops sitting a whole day. Some say they may have just been laid off, but temporarily dare not tell family, can only go out as usual each day, keep a still working life rhythm. At the same time, many families start to clearly cut spending. No more plans for trips abroad, no more frequent high-end buying, no more luxury items. Some even start selling unused things on second-hand platforms to keep cash flow. The so-called middle-class safety feeling is mostly built on a keep-growing economic setting. Once growth slows, pressure quickly goes down to every family. First, let's make clear a basic problem. What is middle class? Back then, Li Keqiang's one sentence shocked the country. China has 600 million people with monthly income less than 1,000 yuan. That was not said by opponents, it was admitted by the State Council Premier himself. And today, in the background of cooling house market, flexible employment breaking 200 million, middle class returning to poverty, more stopped house loans, officials are still drawing a big future picture. In the next 10 or more years, China will have 800 million middle class. The problem comes, how is this 800 million middle class calculated? The answer is in one key. The definition is lowered a lot. In some official stats ways, the bar for middle income group is low enough to surprise. Monthly income around 3,000 yuan may be included in middle income range. In other words, a three-person family with yearly income 100,000 to 500,000 is put into middle income group. Sounds not low, but if you count in 5 insurances and 1 fund, living costs, many people actually take home only 2,000 or 3,000 yuan. Such income, even basic life safety feeling is hard to build. Can't support self, can't buy house, can't afford kids, but defined by stats as middle class. This gap itself is full of irony. Then what is middle class in ordinary people's hearts? In Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, people imagine middle-class life at least like this. Have house, have car, live in better home, even with garden, garage, stable life quality, kids' education protected. That's the middle-class lifestyle. And today, if counting monthly salary 3,000 yuan as middle income, that basically is doing one thing, statistically upgrade a lot of ordinary or even low-income people to middle class. At first listen, seems like a great achievement. But if you think carefully, you will find a sharp reality. In a country with world's second GDP, yearly export surplus over $1 trillion, monthly income 3,000 yuan counts as middle income. Is this glory or some kind of hard-to-say embarrassment? If really want to make middle-class concept have some value, actually simple, raise the bar to monthly income over 10,000 yuan. That at least means a person can keep a relatively decent life in the city, can bear housing, education, and health costs. But what is reality? Nationwide, people with real monthly income over 5,000 yuan are about 100 million. Many just cross the tax starting point. In such income structure, if want to push most people to monthly 10,000 level in next 10 years, what is needed? Not slogans, not stats ways, but real fast and keep going economic growth, industry upgrade, and lots of high pay job chances. The problem is exactly, when GDP target is lowering, job pressure keep rising. How to make such future happen? The 800 million middle class in Lu Chenjian's words, if put in today's real setting, rather than a miracle, it's more like a crazy dream. Because if you zoom in the lens, you will see a totally different reality. House prices going down, unstable jobs, flexible employment big increase, middle class returning to poverty, more stopped house loans. What is really scary is not the material hard times, but the collapse of expectations. When most people in a society start to find, no matter how hard they try, it's hard to change their fate. Even keeping the original life level becomes harder and harder. That spreading group hopeless feeling is way more dangerous than simple poverty. History shows again and again, when beliefs collapse, expectations break, hopes fade, society's deep shakes will quietly start. If you like our content, please remember to like, subscribe, and turn on the little bell. See you next time.